This conference will now be recorded.
So my dear friends, today we are going to learn about FSMO rules. FSMO rules are very, you can say, very important. Whenever you go for an interview, you will be asked questions related to the FSMO rules, meaning they are the guaranteed questions. Whenever you go for a system admin interview, you will be asked. If you are not asked a question related to FSMO, that means the job is not for system admin, the job is for a desktop engineer. So it is so important. Meaning, if in an interview you go of system admin and there is no question related to FSMO, it is like impossible. So my dear friends, FSMO is flexible single master operation. So FSMO are actually a rules, a task that is done by a domain controller and that no other domain controller can do. That means, my dear friends, when we have, if we see, when we have started, we created a forest. In that forest, we had a domain, and in that domain, we had a domain controller. Now, what we have created, we cannot create one more domain controller. We can create additional domain controller. So, my dear friends, so this the first server is known as the domain controller. Rest all others can be additional domain controller. So why this server is known as domain controller? Why? Because this server is having some rules, some powers, which only this domain controller can do and which no other domain controller can do. Even though, my dear friends, in this DC, you can create users here. DC can create users. Even ADC can create users. And we have seen that even when the DC is down, ADC can create users. But there are some extra rules. There are some jobs which is more than creating users and groups, and there are more responsibilities that a DC can perform and ADC cannot perform. And why the DC can perform? Because it has those rules, those powers. And those rules and those powers are known as the FSMO rules. And they are the backbone of Active Directory. The way in a human being, if the backbone has a problem, the entire human being has a problem, because the entire structure of our body depends on backbone. The same way, if there is a problem in the FSMO role, your Active Directory has a problem. Now, my dear friends, if I want to see the rules, then what is the command to see the rules? To see the rules, the command is netdom, netdom query FSMO. The command is netdom query FSMO. So my dear friends, you have to run this command on your DC and on your ADC and see the result. So please go to your DC. Please go to your DC and open up the CMD and run this command. So please come to your DC and type here CMD and then run the command. The command is net netdom query FSMO. Netdom query FSMO. So my dear friends, you can see when you type the command netdom query FSMO, you can see there are total 5 rules. There are total 5 responsibilities, and one of them is schema master. schema master, domain naming master, PDC, RID, pool manager. Here it is manager. Infrastructure master. Okay, so there are total 5 roles, there are total 5 responsibilities which this DC is having. And you can see here who is schema master, whose name is there, DC. Who is domain naming master, DC. Who is PDC master, DC. Who is RID pool manager, DC. Who is infrastructure master, DC. So when you type the command, you will come to know who is having this role. So that's why these roles are single master. Okay, so what is the meaning of single master? Flexible single master operation. It has a good meaning. If you go to ADC and you open up the CMD, if you go to ADC and if you open up the CMD and if you type the command, the same command if you type, and the command is netdom query FSMO, netdom query FSMO. So my dear friends, if I type the same command in ADC, I can see the result, and the result is in front of you. And if I run the same command from the ADC and I say, hey, who is the schema master? Result is same, DC. Who is the domain naming master? DC. Who is the PDC? Read infra, DC. So that means right now DC is having the role. ADC has no role, responsibility right now of FSMO. The role is with DC. Why it is with DC only? Why not with ADC? We are going to understand, but try to understand the concept of single master. Single master meaning schema master is only DC. Who is schema master? It is DC. Who is schema master meaning who can make changes in schema? Who has the responsibility to manage the schema? What is schema? We will see. So we will see each and every role in depth. But who has the responsibility to manage the schema? That is DC. Who has the responsibility for domain naming, for PDC, for it, for infra? Who has that responsibility? And that is DC. Getting the point? So no other domain controller is having that responsibility as of now. That is DC. So are you understanding the concept of single master, my dear friend? Single master. Single master. Meaning only one domain controller can perform that part, that job. That responsibility can be performed only by one domain controller. Schema master is DC, then ADC cannot be the schema master. Only one person can be schema master. Are you understanding, my dear friend? Single master. Now the next thing is, apart from this 5 rules, so there are 5 additional responsibilities with DC. And DC can create user, ADC also can create user. DC can create users, ADC can create users. So sometimes they are known as multi-master also. Sometimes they are known as multi-master also. Multi-master in the sense, multi-master application, sometimes you might heard this word, multi-master. Multi-master meaning DC can create users, ADC can create users. That's why they are known as multi-master. Meaning this is DC can create users, and ADC can also create users. So they, in terms of creation of users, they are multi-master. Okay, DC can create user, ADC can create users. So they are multi-master in creation of users and groups. DC has the power to make changes in Active Directory. ADC also has the power to make changes in Active Directory. But when it comes to FSMO role, this 5 role, it is not multi-master, it is single master. Only one person will have that role, ADC will not have that role. Are you understanding, my dear friend? multi-master meaning, sometimes you might heard the word multi-master. In multi-master in the sense that DC can create user, ADC can create user. So we say that okay, they are following they are multi-master. There is a multi-master replication going on between DC and ADC. DC, you create user here, it will get replicated here. You create user here, it will get replicated here. But when we talk about FSMO rules, there are only single master, only one domain controller will have that rules. If example, if DC is schema master, ADC cannot be schema master. ADC cannot perform the job of handling the schema. Now, my dear friends, the next thing is this 5 rules can be transferred. This 5 rules I can transfer. Okay, so for example, for a reason, this is my domain controller and I'm going to perform some activity on this domain controller. For example, I want to upgrade the RAM on this domain controller. So I will down this domain controller. This domain controller will be down for like 2 hours, 4 hours. So before that, I know that I have to perform this activity on Sunday. I have called up the vendor. The vendor will come. For example, you take the hardware from Dell. Do not worry, the vendor will come. It's all the vendor job. They will come. They will just upgrade the hardware for you. So, but I have to take the downtime. So I take the downtime that on Sunday between 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. we can do this activity. We have got this downtime. Downtime meaning if on this time it can be down. So before that activity, I can transfer all the rules, all 5 rules I can transfer. And this ADC will become what if I transfer all the roles? You know what? If I transfer all the roles, all the 5 roles to the ADC, you know what ADC will become? What do you think ADC will become? And you will say, my dear friends, when you have power, then you know in Maharashtra things can happen. You get power, you become chief minister also. The same thing. If you get power, this ADC will become DC. And when your power is lost, what you become? You become ADC. So I think our Maharashtra state is a perfect example. So my dear friends, power transfer. So here, if all the 5 rules are transferred, then DC becomes ADC and ADC becomes DC. Why? Because it is having the power, it is having the rules, it can do 5 jobs. It can do that. It has that FSMO power, so it becomes DC. If you transfer the rules, DC will become ADC and ADC will become DC. Are you understanding, my dear friends? But transfer can be done only when both are live. Transfer can be done only when both are up, or we can say both are live. Transfer you can do when both are connected, reachable. Okay, then you can transfer. You know that on this Sunday I have an activity, I will transfer the rule and then I will do my activity, and then when everything is okay, then I will transfer the rule back to this ADC, meaning my left hand side server, and then once again when it gets the rule, it becomes DC. Okay, so it will become DC. So I can transfer the role to a domain controller, that will become DC, and from that I can transfer the rules back to myself. Now, my dear friends, the next thing is, imagine that your domain controller is down. Okay, your domain controller, which is having those rule, is down. And in this case, it is down without any information, meaning there is a processor failure. Your domain controller, which is having the rule, it is down. You don't even know. It is like an abrupt failure. It is down. There is a processor failure. Now, my dear friends, in this case, the DC is down and you did not even got the opportunity to transfer the role because you don't even know processor was malfunction. It was not working. Domain controller is not reachable. Reason is processor was not working. Motherboard is not working. Physical hardware failure. Power supply is not working. So your domain controller is down without informing you, meaning you did not even got the chance to transfer the rules. So this domain controller at 10 a.m. imagine was having the rule, and at 10:05 there is a processor failure and this domain controller is down. So this domain controller is down with rules, meaning when it is down and it says that I have the rule but processor is down, so I'm not responding. It is down, completely down, but it is down with the rules are not transferred. So in that case, you contacted the vendor says it will take 2 weeks, 1 week for us to come and to replace your hardware and all these things. By the time, what you can do, you cannot run your domain, you cannot run your forest without FSMO role holder down. Getting the point? It is the backbone of Active Directory. So in such case, what to do? I was not able to transfer. In such case, Microsoft has given you the option to seize the role. What you have to do? You have to seize the role. When the role holder is down, you have to perform seize operation. You have to perform seize here, and then this ADC will become DC. You have to give the role to the ADC and it will become DC. Now, my dear friends, seize can be performed where seize is performed only when the role holder DC is down. Then only you can perform seize. Otherwise, it cannot be performed. If the role holder DC is down, then only seize can be performed. Now, my dear friends, after 2 weeks, your role holder DC is up. You cannot just go ahead and directly replace the processor and make it up. You know what will happen? There will be a clash in your environment. Clash meaning? Imagine that uncle was having all the property on his name. Uncle has not distributed the property among his children. Uncle has all the property on his name. And one day, uncle had a problem in the heart. So the children took the uncle to the ICU. Now the doctor says condition is very critical. We don't know anything can happen. Not the children's themselves decided that uncle is not going to come out. And what they did, they distributed the properties and took the properties in their name. They call up the lawyer and they just name the properties on their name. But uncle does not know about all these things. Uncle is in ICU. Properties are in the name of uncle here, and properties are being distributed among the children and they have taken on their name. They have seized. Uncle has no idea. Uncle says property is in my name. And luckily, uncle comes out from ICU. And uncle says property is in my name. Children says no, property has been distributed. They are in our name. Getting the point? So this is clash. The same thing here, my dear friends. When this DC was down, it says I am the role holder. I am having the schema master, domain naming master, rate PDC, and infrastructure master role. And at 10:05, the processor failed and the domain controller was down. So when it was down, it's the operating system. In the operating system in Active Directory, it says that it is having the rule. It was a motherboard processor failure, physical failure, but operating system and Active Directory service, everything was as it is, meaning it was in the mind of the server that I am the domain controller, I have the rules. So now you seize the role, because you cannot just run your Active Directory without the role holder. There has to be a role holder, a DC, who is having all these roles, who can manage schema and all these things. Without that, you cannot run your domain or forest. You will face issues. So you perform the seize operation. Correct, that is recommended in such case. After that, the next recommendation is, do not make this domain controller directly up. If you make it up, there will be a clash, because it will say I am the DC, this will say I am the role holder, it will say I have the role holder, there will be a clash. If you do like this, then you have to do not contact me in such case. Contact directly Microsoft. Your case is critical now. You have to deal with uncle, so you have to talk with Microsoft in this case. Okay, so the best thing is, do not do it. If you do it, then it is a very critical case. You have to deal with, take the Microsoft support. That's what I can say. High level expertise, it will be required here. So my dear friends, in such case, what is the recommendation? You perform seize, do not make it up. Okay, then what to do? I replace the processor, then I cannot just throw this server. Do not worry, format this and install the operating system once again. ISO image is there. And then, my dear friend, install the Active Directory service and make this server as an ADC. Promote this server as an ADC. DC is there now. Make this server as an ADC. When you make this server as an ADC, it will believe everything. Okay, if you directly up, it will put a clash. Okay, if you format it and if you install the operating system again, and then if you install the Active Directory service, and then you have to make this server as an ADC, and now this is the DC of your company, so it will believe that this is the DC and I am the ADC. So there is no concept of clash, because you have just made it like a fresh installation. Getting the point, my dear friends? Are you understanding? In case of seize, what you have to do? In case of transfer, there is no issue. In case of seize, you have to take care of this thing. Remember, seize will be performed by very senior person of your company, and seize case is very danger case. Seize case meaning your DC is down. It is a very big issue. Your company will run here and there. Everyone will be on high alert. DC is down is not a simple thing. Your company manager, senior manager, program manager, CEO, everything will come into loop. Not CEO, but at least your manager, senior manager, and up to program managers. At least this level of people will be in loop. So my dear friends, let's go ahead and let's see the next thing. So this was about transfer. This was about seize. We are going to see all these things. Okay, so let's start. Now, my dear friends, the first thing which we are going to learn is why the DC is having the rule. So if you see carefully, the first time what you did is you just took a server. You took a server, first one, 2022 operating system, you gave the IP and you have given it a name. All these things were there. No domain, no forest, nothing was there. This was the fresh first server. What you did, you install the Active Directory service, and then you click on promote, and then which radio button you click on? After clicking on promote, you will say add a new forest. Correct. So my dear friend, a forest was created. The name of the forest is attari.com, and the name of the domain is also attari.com. The name of the domain is also attari.com. So this is the domain and this is the domain controller, and you have installed the Active Directory service. Then you click on promote, then you give a domain name, a domain is created, a forest is created. So my dear friends, the five rules that you see, the schema master, the domain naming master, the PDC, the RIT pool, the infrastructure master, the five rules that you see is given to this DC, because this DC is the first domain controller. Now, out of these 5 rules that you see the rules carefully, because whenever you go for an interview, you will be asked, okay, about this rule. You have to remember the name also. So, out of these 5 rules, 2 rules are forest wide, and 3 rules are domain wide. You might be wondering, what is forest wide? What is domain wide? We will understand. So, 2 rules are forest wide, meaning at forest level they are, and they are, the 2 rule is, rule number 1 is schema master, and rule number 2 is domain naming master. The next is 3 rules are domain wide: RIT, PDC, and infra master. RID, master, PDC, and infrastructure master. Only Kung Fu master is pending. So, my dear friend, here we have 2 rules. Here we have 3 rules. Okay. So, these 2 rules are forest wide. These 3 rules are domain wide. We will understand what is the meaning of forest wide. We will understand what is the meaning of domain wide. So, because this DC is the first DC of the forest and the first DC of the domain, is there any other domain controller? The answer is no. Obviously, you are going to create first domain controller will be there. No? You will not create DC and ADC at once. I created DC and ADC at once simultaneously. No, my dear friend. You have to create first DC. You have to take a server the way we did 2022 operating system, install Active Directory service, click on promote, then click on add a new forest, and then a forest will be created, a domain will be created. At that time, because this is the first DC of the forest and the first DC of the domain, because it is the first DC of the forest and first DC of the domain, total 5 rules are given to this DC. It says you will handle this total 5 rules. You will handle the forest 2 rules and you will handle the domain 3 rules. So that's why you see the name of DC. Schema master. Who is schema master? Who will handle schema? DC. Who will handle domain naming? DC. Who will handle PDC? DC. Who will handle RID pool? Who will handle infrastructure? DC. So DC is having that 5 rules. Now, my dear friends, the next thing is, when you create an ADC, when you create a ADC, additional domain controller, my dear friends, in this case, if you go to ADC and if you type the command netdom query FSMO, you will see that there is nowhere the name of ADC. If I type the name of this server, the name is, host name is ADC, but it says, oh, schema master is DC, domain naming is DC, PDC, all these things are handled by DC. My name is ADC, I do not have any rules. I am an ADC. My name is also ADC and my responsibility is also ADC. I am an additional domain controller. So, my dear friends, here it is not having any rule. Now, to give you a simple idea what is the meaning of forest and what is the meaning of domain, I will take you to the days of school. In school days, you might have enjoyed a lot. And in school, when you were in school, for example, everyone used to think, when I will earn. There is a normal thought as a student, in school it comes, I will quickly complete my study and I will earn big. That big is a big dream. So sometimes that big amount does not come, so sometimes it becomes a dream. But if you are passionate enough, if you put in day and night effort, and only one time effort you have to put, that is the beauty of knowledge. One time effort you have to put, knowledge will stay with you for a long time. Money will come and go, knowledge will stay with you. That one time effort, that one time pain, if you are ready to take, you will get the gain. So, my dear friends, coming back on this point, so for example, you live in a society, and in that society, you want to create a school, and from the first standard, you people decided, okay, we live in a society, there is no school, there is no class. Okay, let us start with class 1. Let us start with the basic class 1. So you people decided, okay, we have to start class 1. So what you people will need, you will say that we will need a space to create a school, and then in the school boundary, what will be there in the school? In the school, the most important thing is classroom. Imagine playground is there in the school, but classroom is not there. It is not possible. Then it will be playground. So in a school, classroom will be there. So imagine your forest as a school. Your forest is nothing but like a school. And your domain, Attari.com, the root domain, the first domain here, is nothing but like your first standard classroom. The way school can consist of multiple class, first classroom, second classroom, third, fourth, fifth standard, sixth standard, seventh, eighth, the same way a forest can consist of multiple domain. This is the first domain is known as root domain. Further, it can consist of child domain and tree domain. But there is a need, unnecessarily we do not create child domain and tree domain. There is a need for that, and we are going to understand the need for that also. Why do you need a child domain? Why do you need a tree domain? Otherwise, if you have a single domain, then this is also famously known as single domain forest, and most of the companies work on single domain forest. There is no need to have an unnecessary domain like child domain and tree domain. But we will understand in that session, why do you need a child domain and tree domain. As of now, this setup is a single domain forest. As of now, what you see on the screen. So my dear friends, what you did is you created a classroom, you had the benches, you have the students also, you have the whiteboard, the blackboard, whatever board you have it, you have the school boundary, you have inside, you have classroom, in classroom you have benches and board and students. But what do you need? You need a teacher. So you got a teacher, and that teacher was because that was the first teacher, and there is no other class, only you people have created the first standard class. So that teacher was also the principal. That teacher was also declared the principal, and the principal level powers were given to the teacher. And this, along with principal, it is also the class teacher of standard 1, first standard. So in this case, imagine this is that teacher, the DC, because in school case, that teacher is the first teacher of the school. So people said, no, you will become principal, you will have power of principal also. And because you are the first teacher of this class 1, you will be the class teacher of this school, of this class. You will have the power of class teacher also. So my dear friends, the same case happened with DC. The DC is the first DC of the forest, so it got the forest wide power. It can handle schema and domain naming master. And because it was the first DC of the domain, it got the domain 3 roles also, read PDC and infrastructure master. That's why in DC, when you type netdom query FSMO, you see all the 5 rules. The same way in our class teacher example, it got the power of the principal also, it got the power of the class teacher also. Now power of principal meaning, for example, imagine in school analogy, principal can declare an holiday, which no other class teacher can. Principal, the one who is the principal, he can declare an holiday. Tomorrow is an holiday. Sir, tomorrow is Monday, there is no holiday. No holiday. The principal power, principal is very good, anytime principal wakes up and gives holiday, but that is the power of principal. So principal can declare an holiday. Imagine he has that power. The same way, this domain controller has the power of schema. It can manage the schema which no one can manage. It can manage domain naming master with no one can manage. And then the class teacher powers, the class teacher is having, it is also the class teacher, so it handles the classroom, and it has the power that, for example, it can send a student out of the class. No, you have not done the homework, go out, stand on both of your legs and like some kind of punishment which I was never one time I got a punishment to stand out of the classroom. And then I don't remember that whether I got a punishment or not. One time I remember I was standing out of the class. So I think this was the class teacher. We did something. So we were standing out of the class. So this kind of power is there for the class teacher. The same way, my dear friend, this DC has the power of read PDC and infra. What is that power? I will show you. What if a domain controller is a read master, what it can do. If a domain controller is PDC master, what it can do. If a domain controller is having the infrastructure master, what it can do. If the domain controller is having the schema master, what it can do. And if a domain controller is having a domain naming master power, what it can do. Do not worry, we are going to deep dive in that, but we are understanding the structure right now. So my dear friends, have you understood till here? I have taken you to the days of school. Might be some of you, some of your teachers might be favorite, some teachers are favorite, some teachers we remember they are like very khadus. But I don't remember any because I've changed multiple schools. In my case, I got second rank in my school in 10th standard, and everyone was thinking, who is this, who is this person. And when the teacher gave me the result, she was like shocked, you are there. And even I was not knowing that I was there. So my dear friends, coming back here, so the next thing is, if we have a class second, let's see, a school can have multiple class. Okay, before going to that, this ADC is, for example, this ADC is the maths teacher of this class. It is the maths teacher of this class. So it does not have any power. It has some responsibility. It is teaching maths, but it does not have any, it is not the class teacher. It does not have the class teacher power. It is not even principal. Getting the point? Are you understand? Yeah, I hope you have understood till here. Now the next thing is, my dear friends, for example, in our class analogy, we can create class 2 also, right? Class second. So when you create class second, what do you need? For example, if you create a class second standard classroom, second standard class, what do you need? You will say that in second standard class we will need students, and we need a teacher, we need a class teacher. Okay, so will this class teacher work there? You will say no, the class teacher of first standard will not work there. Every class should have its own class teacher, right? Am I right, my dear friend? Every class should have its own class teacher, correct? So the same way, every new domain will have its own domain controller. Remember, every new domain will have its own domain controller. So this second class, meaning in our case, imagine we are going to create a child domain, which I will explain you. Child domain will be created. And for this child domain, we will need a domain controller. For example, we are going to create a child domain like japan.attari.com, a child domain like this. And this will be a Japan DC. This will be like the class teacher. This will be like the class teacher of this domain. Tell me one thing, my dear friend. Will this class teacher, will this Japan domain will have the principal powers? What do you think? Will it have the principal power? Is it the principal? Can there be two principal in a school? I have not seen a school having two principal. There will be a clash. If you have seen a school with two principal, tell me. Principal is only one. There can be vice principal, but there is no concept of vice principal here. Principal power is only one. So class teacher, it will be a class teacher, but these are principal powers. Forest meaning school power, principal powers. These are given. There is only one principal. So there is only one. That means only this DC will have these two powers. No other DC will have this. Getting the point, my dear friends? Schema and domain naming master. Only one domain controller in the entire forest will have schema and domain naming master rule. Remember this carefully, my dear friends. Only one schema master and domain naming master, DNM domain naming master, DNM domain naming master, domain naming master will be there in forest. Only one schema master and domain naming master will be there in your forest. That means if the role is given to DC, if the DC is schema master and domain naming master, if the power it is having, no other domain controller can have that power. It is like the principal power. It is like the principal of your school. And it is looking like principal signature also. Now, my dear friends, coming back here. So, okay. So it is class teacher. So will it have class teacher powers? Yes, it will have the class teacher power. In our case, the class teacher power is the read PDC and infra. And the principal power is schema and domain naming master. So will it have the class teacher powers? So the answer is yes. It will have the domain, the three roles of the domain. That is the read, PDC, and infrastructure master. So my dear friends, here would be read, PDC, and infrastructure master. So it will have this class teacher powers. Getting the point, my dear friends? Are you understanding? So every new domain, we can say it like this. Every domain will have its own read, PDC, and infrastructure master. But it will be single master, meaning only one domain controller will have that role. Every domain will have its own read, PDC, and infrastructure master. But in a domain, there cannot be two read, two PDC, and two infrastructure master. No, single master. So in Attari.com domain, there will be one DC, one domain controller doing the job of read, PDC, and infra. The same way in Japan.attari.com, there will be a domain controller having the job of read, PDC, and infra. Okay, so in this forest here in Attari.com, this will be the read, PDC, and infra. In Japan.attari.com, JDC will have the read, PDC, and infrastructure master. Apart from this domain controller, this is the principal also, meaning it is having the forest level role also. So my dear friends, now there is a small question for you. Let us see how many people of you are really awake. I might have taken you into dreams because I am not good in theory. So coming back here, so my dear friends, let's see how many people are awake. So the question for you is, I have shown you, we have this setup. We have the DC, we have the ADC, and I've shown you NetDOM query FSMO, what is the result? I've shown you NetDOM query FSMO, what is the result? And I will show you once again. DC, all the roles, schema and domain naming master, forest level role, principal level powers are with him, and the read, PDC, infrastructure roles are with DC because this is the first DC of the forest. So it got the role, it become the principal, and it is the first DC of the domain Attari.com, it got this role. So it got total 5 role. Now in ADC, if you say ADC has not got any role because ADC is just a normal additional domain controller, it is not having that role. Obviously, two people will not have the role. It is a single master concept. The next thing is, if I type the same command netdom query FSMO in Japan DC, my dear friend, you have to tell me that schema master, domain naming master, RID, PDC, and infrastructure master. The name is DC, the name of this domain controller is GDC. Where what I will see? Think and tell. Think and tell. What will be the result here? Tick, 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 tick. You have to type schema this name, domain naming master this name, read this name, PDC this name, infra this name. Okay, so my dear friends, okay. So that's great. A lot of you have given the right answer. The right answer is, if you go to the if you go, imagine you are entering the classroom, second classroom, and you just meet the class teacher and you ask the class teacher, hey, who is the principal of your school? Will the class teachers of second class will say, I am the principal of this school? No, it will say, who is the principal? He is the principal. You see that class teacher one, he is the principal also. So my dear friend, the same way, when you are typing netdom query FSMO, you are asking the Japan domain controller, who is the schema master? And it will say, I am not the schema master. DC is the schema master. DC is the domain naming master. These are forest wide roles. They are given to only one domain controller. That domain controller is having the role. We don't have. In a forest, we are in the same forest. So that domain controller is having that role. The next thing is read PDC and infra will be whose name. Every domain will have its own read PDC and infra. That means every class will have its class teacher. So here in read PDC and infra, you will see Japan DC. Getting the point, my dear friends? Have you understood this? If you have not understood till now, why it is DC, why in schema master and domain naming master it is DC, and why in read PDC infra it is JDC, then you have to go back to the school days. Meet your principal, meet your class teacher one, class teacher second, meet them, and then come back and revise this. You will have a very good idea. Okay. That's what I can say, my dear friend. Okay. Because, but still for you, I will try to revise. If you have, I don't know, I'm just, I have a very bad habit of unnecessarily doing revision. Correct, it is a bad habit, because sometimes someone do not even say, then only I revise. Without saying also I revise. One principal, multiple class teacher, correct. So Sailesh bhai, you are right. So my dear friends, the principal can be one na, and every class can have a class teacher. So the class teacher, the class first class teacher, the class teacher of the first classroom is the class teacher also, and the principal also. The class teacher of next classroom, second classroom, is only class teacher. It is not principal. Principal can only be one. The same way, my dear friends, if you map this, it is a perfect analogy. In your forest, there is only one domain controller which will have the schema and the domain naming master, because these are the forest level rules. Forest level rule meaning, in the entire forest, only one domain controller will be schema master and domain naming master. And every domain has three roles: read, PDC, and infrastructure master. If you create a new domain, then it will have its own read, PDC, and infrastructure master. So what happens when you create this DC? When you install the Active Directory service, the DC is created. This DC is the first DC of your forest. In the entire forest, this is the first DC, and this is the first DC of your domain. So it gets the forest level 2 role also, that you are the schema master. You will do the job of schema and domain naming master, and you will do the job of read, PDC, and infra master, because you are the first domain controller of the domain attari.com. So you got all the 5 rules. And when you create an ADC, ADC is like the maths teacher. It has no rules. It can just do additional ADC job, and we have seen about ADC in depth in the ADC session. The next thing is, when you create a child domain, meaning second class second. So every class will have its own class teacher. The same way, every new domain will have its own domain controller. So class teacher powers are read, PDC. Class teacher have its own power. The same way, whenever you create a new domain, in every domain there should be a domain controller. which will be read PDC and infra master. There should be someone who should have the read PDC and infra master. So my dear friends, this Japan DC will become the PDC, read PDC and infrastructure master role will be given to Japan DC. And when you type the netdom query FSMO rule, it will not say that I am the schema master, I am the domain naming master. Why? Because these are the forest level rules. These are domain schema, and domain is only given to one domain controller. So it will show you that I do not have the schema and the domain naming master. DC is having that role. In my domain of japan.attari.com, I am the read master, I am the PDC master, I am the infrastructure master. Getting the point, my dear friends? That's good. That's great. Now let's go ahead and let's see the next session. No, sorry, not next. Let's see one by one what is schema master and what is domain naming master. And then we will see what is read PDC and infrastructure master. We will take one role one by one and we will transfer the role. So you will be learning roles. You will be learning the responsibility. What is there in schema master? What is the job of schema master? What if the domain controller is having the power of schema master? What it is going to do? That's what we are going to see. Just give me a moment. Okay, so my dear friends, the flow will go like this. We will understand about schema. What is schema? First of all, we will understand what is schema. Then we will understand what is schema master. So we will understand what is schema. We will understand that what is the job of schema master, and then we will transfer the role to another. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's do this, my dear friend. What is the meaning of schema master? Schema master. Now, my dear friends, here how it works. Let's see. First of all, what is schema? Schema is nothing but object type and its attributes. Schema is nothing but object type and its attributes. Now, you might be wondering, what is object type? Tell me one thing, what is an object? You will say that when you go to dsa.msc, I take the question, I take the answer, so you have an understanding. So my dear friends, because the most important thing is we are confident that our students do not revise, so we do not take answers from you. If we take the answers from you people, we would be completely shocked. Is this what I have taught? Is this what I have taught? So I do not want to take that blaster, meaning that particular shock on my head. So that's why I take the question, I take the answer, because most of the time people do not revise. They revise on the same night when they tomorrow morning, early mornings, 9 a.m. they have interview, and today night they will take the book and they will revise. So my dear friends, coming back on this point, so here what we have is we have the objects. This is the object, the user that you have created, like Zamir, like Irfan, like Nazim. These are the users. These are the users. Objects is user, share folder, printer. Oh, you perfect, Suman bhai. That's great. So my dear friends, this is an object. This user that you see, the actual user, this Nazim is an object, user object. Irfan is an object. This 11-12 group is an object. This computers that you see, no, we do not have computers, but do we have domain controllers? Yes. From here we can see how many domain controllers we have in our domain, and we can see that for which site they belong to, because we have site and subnet also. So from here we can see In the previous session, we have learnt about site and subnet also. So from here, we can see how many domain controllers we have in our domain. Like DC we have, and ADC we have. Okay, so this OU is an object. This computer is an object. This user is an object. We have learned all these things in the group policies session. We have learned in depth about OUs and much more things we have learned. So my dear friends, all these things is an object. This is an object. What you see right now, user, this is an object. This is an object. But the type is computer object, user object. You can see the type here. So there is a difference between object and object type. See here. What is object type? Object type meaning user is an object type. Computer is an object type. I'm just taking an few example. OU is an object type. Now you can create the user like Zamir, you can create, for example, Nazim, you can create PC1. Whenever the computer one is joined to the domain, it can be seen OU, we have created ITOU, HROU. These are actual objects. These are known as objects. These are known as objects. And these are known as object type. These are known as object type. So my dear friends, these are object type. So user, computer, OU, and there are multiple object types. So they are there. These are object types, and these are the actual objects. We are able to create the objects. We are able to create the objects. Why? We are able to create the user object. Why am I able to create the user object? If I go here and if I click on this user, why am I able to create the user object? Because this object, user object, this object I am able to create, like Zamir user, Irfan user, Nazim user, I am able to create because the user object type is present. Whenever you join a computer to the domain, the computer is shown PC1, PC2, PC3. Why? Because the computer object type is present. You are able to create OUs. Why? Because the OU object type is present. So you are able to create this object because their object types are present. Getting the point? Their object type is there, then only you are able to create them. If it is not there, if the user object type is not there, you cannot create user. If the computer object type is not there, you cannot create computer. If the OU object type is not there, you cannot create OUs. Okay, I got this. But what is the concept of schema here? So my dear friend, this object type schema schema consists of object types and its attribute. This is one line definition for schema. Schema consists of object types and its attribute, meaning this object type are defined in schema. They are present in schema. They are there in schema, and because of that you are able to create these objects. If they are not there in the schema, if the user object type is not there in the schema, you will not be able to create users. Okay, that's okay. I've understood this. Then further, what is the meaning of attributes? What is attributes? Attributes, along with every object, you have some attributes, meaning the user object will have attributes like first name, last name, mobile number, phone number, social security number. A lot of attributes are there. Now first name, last name, for example, these are there. When I create an object Zamir, I will put the first name Zamir, last name Umin, Nazim, first name, last name, for example Sheikh, and Irfan Khan, whatever it is, I will put, it will change, value will change. But attributes are like first name, last name are defined in the, along with the object types, the attributes for that objects are also defined. Along with the computer object, the attributes like operating system version are defined here. Along with the OU object types, the attributes of that objects are also defined. So that means, my dear friend, along with the object types, the attributes are defined in the schema. Along with the object types, the attributes are defined in the schema, and I can see those attributes. For example, I will show you. I will show you the schema also, and I will show you the object type also and the attribute also. Getting the point? So my dear friends, for this you have to run a command, and the command is reg svr 32 schema mgmt.dll. reg svr32 schema management.dll. You have to run this command and you must see this succeeded. See here, reg svr32 schema management.dll. reg svr32 space schmmgmt.dll. My dear friends, just go ahead and run this command and you will see a message of succeed. Done, my dear friends? Okay, that's great. Now the next thing is, if you run this command, then only you can see the schema. Directly you cannot see the schema. My dear friends, you cannot directly see the schema. Now what you have to do is, you have to type the command here, mmc. Sometimes some full form I know. So in some full form I am not interested. Okay. So one time a student asked, sir, what is the full form of MSc? You type lusr.mgr.msc, for example. What is the full form of MSc? Some full forms are logical, like FSMO, flexible single master operation. Some full forms are like full form only. So whenever you have the curiosity of what is the full form, Google it out. Okay, because see, I don't remember all the full forms, but if you have curiosity, you can just put it on Google and you will get the full form. So my dear friends, here if I type mmc, then I'm not able to see, but type here run and then type mmc. So please type run, and then type mmc. Please type run and then type mmc. Have you open up the mmc? And remember, whenever you go for an interview, even though you know a full form of a point like FSMO, someone asks you what is FSMO, so you should not start with FSMO is flexible single master operation and then there is a full stop. Further, do not start like this. Do not ever start with full forms. No one is interested in full forms. The interviewer is not interested in full forms. He can also Google and find the full form. So, or he might know. So the next thing is, you should start, okay, what like FSMO is the backbone of the Active Directory. They are the 5 roles. They are divided into forest wide and domain wide. Forest wide 2 roles are there, schema master and domain naming master. Domain name wide 3 roles are there, read PDC and infrastructure master. So when we create the first domain controller, the first domain controller is the domain controller of my domain and of my forest. So automatically it gets the total 5 role, that is the forest 2 roles and the domain through 3 rules. So the forest 2 roles are schema master, domain naming master, and the domain read PDC and infrastructure master. And these roles can be transferred, but transfer can be done only when both the role holder are live, they are active, they are online. And if one of the role holder, the domain controller which is having the role, it is down, then we have to perform the seize operation. Now my dear friends, come back here. All this theory is there in LMS PDF. Okay, LMS, the learning management portal of Attari class, where you see the video, the notes and interview question. Everything is there. It's your responsibility to go ahead and revise and read the notes, refer the uh, question answers, read the document which is given in the form of PDF. And because you people have taken training, okay, we have separate LMS also. In LMS there is no trainer support. If someone takes only LMS, he has to do self study. How he will study? His study. Okay, because but you people have taken training, you are in the part of the Attari class WhatsApp group also, so you can message me anytime, and when you read the notes you have some doubt, you can message me, because everything is written by myself only. Okay, so I will send you a voice on WhatsApp. If you're not able to understand that concept, I will send you a voice. But when I send you a voice, do not send me a voice back, because I do not have time to listen to voice of every student, because we are like giving support to students who have passed 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10, 6 years. So support is for everyone, so you can understand how many messages might come on the trainer's WhatsApp. Okay, so if we start listening everyone's voice message, then it is tough. We will send you voice to save time. You have to put in the chat box along with the error screenshot. Now my dear friends, come back here. So click on file and click on open. Are you on this page, my dear friends? Are you on this page? Click on file and click on open. Oh, I think I went to the wrong page by talking. Click on file and click on new. Click on file and click on new. Click on file and click on new. Go back and click on file and click on new. Are you on this page? So my dear friends, click on file and click on new. Are you on this page? And do you see here? Okay, new we have already opened. Now we have to add. Sorry, two mistake. Click on add. Are you on this page? Click on file and click on add. Click on file and click on add. Are you on this page? Do you see the Active Directory schema? If you are not able to see the schema, that means the command is not run properly. Okay, my dear friend, you have to run the command, then only you will see it. So do you see the Active Directory schema? Do you see this? Do you see this? Put this in the right hand side. Have you put in the right hand side? Have you put this in the right hand side? And you have to say okay, and then you can see the object type and the attributes. So click on OK. And my dear friends, do you see the Active Directory schema? Do you see this? You will be able to see. Asif bhai, I will make you the presenter. Let's see what's happening on your screen. So okay, you're trying to run the command in the on your system. You have to run this command on DC on your system. Tomorrow also you will not find. It is just a joke, my dear friend. Asif bhai is Attari classes favorite student. So my dear friend, here MMC file, add, remove, snapping, and Active Directory schema, and add, and OK. Now you will see it. Piyush bhai, is your problem resolved? Okay, that's great. Now my dear friends, click on classes. Click on class. Do you see class? Do you see class? Click on class. Do you see class? On the right hand side, do you see a lot of things you will see here? These are all object type, but which we are comfortable. Try to search user. Do you see the object type as user? Do you see the user object type? Do you see this? Do you see the computer object type? Do you see the organization OU object type? Now, my dear friends, this user, computer, OU, these are the object types. How many type of objects are there? How many we use very often in the company? Now, there are a lot of object types. Even I have never counted, my dear friend. And we use common object types like user, computers, OUs, groups. These are the common object types that we use. Mostly we deal with this kind of object types. But there are n number of object types in the backend. Now, my dear friends, if you click on user object types, you can also see the attributes related to that object types. When you click on attributes, do you see the attributes? Do you see the attributes related to that object type? Do you see here, these are home phone number, you can add a user phone number, you can add a lot of attributes are there here. Lot of attributes are there. There are so many backend attributes we don't even know. They are for internal for Active Directory. So do you see this attributes? Department number, display name, employee number. Okay, so along with the user you can see the attributes also. You can see the user attributes here. You can click on this and you can click on computer attributes. You can see the computer attributes, but here you can find operating system, the attributes which view can relate. Okay, operating system, outfix, service pack, version, what is the version of the operating system, what the operating system is, it's a 10, Windows 10 or Windows 2022, whatever it is, or Windows 7, whatever operating system it is. So my dear friends, these are the attributes that you can see here. The next is all the attributes are defined here, all the objects, all the attributes, all the user, all the users object type, and all their attributes are here. It is a very big list. All the attributes are here. Here you will find all the attributes, like for example employee ID, which I've shown you in user, it is there, employee ID, employee number. Operating system, which I have shown in you in computer object, can be seen here. It means here all the attributes are here. Getting the point? Now my dear friends, if I open up Active Directory users, if you click on users, and for example if you click on computer, where is ITOU, where is this computer, PC1, if I want to see the attributes, so if I click on view and if I click on advanced features, view and advanced features, view and advanced features, just click on view, go to Active Directory users and computers, click on view and advanced feature. Done, my dear friends. Now here, if you click here, if you click on the user, here user is there, computer is there. Let's see both. If you click on attribute editor, then you can see the employee ID number. Do you see employee ID? The attributes, the value can change. My employee ID number can be different. Irfan's employee ID number can be different. Okay, value can be different. Right hand side can be different. But why I am able to see the employee ID, employee number, employee type? Because they are defined here in the schema. Employee ID, employee number, employee type. Getting the point? It is there in the schema. It is there with this user object. If I click on user, here you have employee ID, employee number. So here there is a list. Okay, so my dear friends, if I come here, so why am I able to see this? Because they are defined in this schema. Getting the point? Now I can set the employee ID. I can click on edit and I can set the employee ID 11408. This is my employee ID. This is my employee number. Getting the point? Employee type, permanent, contractual, whatever it is, if required it can be put. So are you understanding, my dear friends? So then if I go to the computer objects, operating system, I can see the operating system name, version. So we if I click on attribute editor, and I can see the operating system attribute, Windows Server 2022 data center. Okay, so that means you are able to see after creation of in the actual object also, you are able to see in the attribute editor these left hand side attributes. Why? Because they are defined in the schema. Getting the point? In the schema of computer object type, these attributes are defined. Have you understood this? That's why when the computer object is created or when the user object is created, you will see all the attributes. So all the users will have the same attributes. So Zamir will have the same attribute. For example, the employee ID, it will have the same one. Okay, employee ID, employee number, it will have the same one. Which I will have the same thing, will the same attributes will be there in Irfan case also. So why it is there? Because it is defined in the schema. Now my dear friends, coming back here, so we have understood that schema consists of object types and its attribute. Now the next thing is can I add a attribute? For example, in the user object type, I've shown you the attribute is like employee ID and all this, so many attributes are there. Yeah, I want to add an attribute like PAN number. In India, PAN number is a number, okay, which is an important number for any financial transaction. You need a PAN number, and I want to add a PAN number attribute in the user object so that I can see the PAN number in all the users. Getting the point? So whenever I create a new user, I can see the PAN number attribute on the left hand side, and then whatever is the PAN number, I can put it. Are you understanding, my dear friends? You got a requirement from your boss that add the PAN number attribute in the user object. Have you got the requirement? Add the PAN number attribute in the user object. So the first thing is you will say user object. Okay, object, user object, not in user object. Okay, so schema consists of object type in it attribute. Okay, I realize that if I want to add the PAN number attribute in the user object, I need to go to the schema, because in schema only the user object is defined and all the attributes are there. I need to go there and add the new attribute. That means I need to make changes in the schema. Are you understanding? That means I need to do what? I need to make changes in the schema. But who has the power to make changes in the schema? Which domain controller has the power to make changes in the schema, my dear friend? It is your DC. It is schema master. Only DC has the power to make changes in the schema. No one can make changes in the schema in the entire forest. Only DC says I have the power to make changes in the schema. So let's see here. So when I go here, and this is the power of DC. Yeah? With the power of DC, you are making changes in the schema. So can I add a new attribute? If I click on attribute, and if I click on more action, if I click on create attribute, yes, I can see create attribute. Click here on attributes. Click on more action, click on create attribute, and then it will give you a warning. Creating schema object is a permanent operation. You are performing an operation. While this of objects may be disabled to prevent their usage, they cannot be deleted and will become a permanent part of your enterprise installation. Meaning, once you make the changes, it cannot be reverted back. If you want, it can be disabled. If you don't want, you can disable it. But once you make the changes, it cannot be reverted back. It's a permanent operation. So I say continue, meaning it cannot be deleted, but if required, it can be disabled. Now, my dear friends, if I click on continue, then it will ask me the LDAP display name, unique X500, object ID, description, syntax, minimum, maximum, multi-value, common name. Are you on this page? Now, my dear friends, to add this attribute, you have to contact Microsoft, because this display name, LDAP display name, it is not the normal display name. It is the Active Directory database query language display name. This object ID has to be created. Okay, so you need a technical support here. So if some requirement comes in your company, then obviously you have to take a technical support. But this is how you can add a new attribute in your schema. Getting the point? Now we do not have all these details, but in production, if it is required, this is a very high level thing. Obviously, when you're doing these things, you will need a support. We cannot just go ahead and put any random ID here. It has to be generated. Now the next thing is, for example, if I want to add a new object type, meaning, for example, in my company robot are also working, and I want to add a robot user, not normal user, a robot user, and then their attributes like robo name or robo first name, last name will not be there, no? Robo address, no. Robo company, which company has manufactured the robo, robo license, something like this. Okay, so my dear friends, here if I want to create a robot user objects, so what I have to do is, so that when I go to dsa.msc, I can see the robot user object here. I can see, I can right click and I can say new, and I can create here. Okay, normally you can see computer contact group, all these things are object type. So printer user, I can create here robo, I can see a robo also, robo object type. Okay, robo object type here. Robo user is not there. I want a separate object type for you, robo users. So then I have to make changes in the schema. Getting the point? I have to go here to the classes. I have to click on more action. I have to click on create class, and then I have to continue. I have to contact Microsoft, get all these details, and then I can add a robo user object type here. Like for example, robo user. Okay, I can add a robo user object type here, and then once I have added this, then I have to add the robot attributes. Okay, robot attributes I have to add, like robo name, robot license, robot manufacturer, whatever whatever it is, I have to add those attributes. So my dear friends, I hope you have understood this, right? What is schema, object types and its attributes, and why, what is the logic of schema master? Only schema master can make changes in the schema. And why would you like to make changes in the schema? But remember, if you make changes in the schema, it is a forest level change. Forest level change meaning, if you make changes in the schema, if you do DSA-MSC from here, for example, if you add PAN number attribute, then the PAN number attribute will be reflected everywhere. Wherever you do DSA-MSC and you try to create a user, everywhere, even in child domain also, the PAN number attribute will be reflected. Getting the point? Because it is a forest level change. What is it? It's a forest level change, meaning all the domains everywhere you will see, whenever you open up dsa.msc, and then whenever you create the user, then you will have an additional attribute. For example, if you add PAN number, then you will have an additional attribute of PAN number. Okay, when you go here in the attribute editor, you will see the left hand side PAN number attribute, also the way you see employee id. Employee id, I'm taking an example, there are so many attributes here. You will see this in child domain also. Getting the point, my dear friends? Because if it is a forest level change, you know, anything coming from the principal is for all these, all the class. Now if the principal says tomorrow is an holiday, so that means all the class will follow the principal. Yes, or entire school, correct? Because the school principal says an holiday, so all the class has to follow, because they belong to the school. So now my dear friends, the next thing is, the next point which we are going to learn is, today I've taken a lot of theory. I feel that you need in some time. Do not worry, I will give you a break. We will complete schema master, we will complete domain naming master, we will complete some few important things, and we will go for a break. I can understand your patience, but I have to at least complete the point. Then I will time you will get the break. But my dear friends, do you feel, you might feel little sleepy, but do you feel complete sleepy? Might be, right? Okay, so coming here. So my dear friends, the next thing which we are going to see is, I want to transfer the rule. So even though if you feel sleepy, do not worry, it can happen as a human being. When someone is speaking in front a lot, it can happen, but at least try to understand the concept. Try to be here, try to be there also, wherever you want, try to be here also. So coming here, So my dear friends, now we have to transfer the role. What we have to do? We have to transfer the role. One by one, we will transfer all the roles. The first role we are going to transfer is schema master role. Which role? Schema master. Now try to understand the concept of role transfer. Whom you want to give the role? What do you think? Whom you want to give the role? Correct. You will say that I want to give the role to ADC. Remember this logic. Go here and you must point to ADC. One way is you can open up the schema from ADC, but that's not, I think, why to go to the ADC and open up the schema. From here also you can point. You have to, one way is you have to go to the ADC and open up the reg SVR 32 MMC, do the same thing. But the best way is go here, right click and say change active directory domain controller. Are you on this page? When you right click, do you see change active directory domain controller? Now my dear friends, when you right click, do you see change active directory domain controller and click on change active directory domain controller, and do you see ADC? You have to connect to the domain controller to whom you want to give the role. Have you click on ADC, my dear friends? And then say okay. And then it is giving you a warning that you are connecting to a domain controller which cannot make changes in the schema. You can only see the schema, but he cannot make changes in the schema. Okay, that's fine. So my dear friends, are you on this page? Do you see that you are pointed to ADC? That's great. Now right click, my dear friends, now right click and say operation master. First of all, before doing that, mine not showing. Okay, Nandlal bhai, I will make you the presenter and let's see what's happening. Change active directory domain controller is not showing. First of all, let me check, do you have a domain controller or not? You have an ADC. Perfect. You have an ADC. And your host name is DC, and the DC is having all the rules. And if I go to ADC, that's quite strange. Let's see. If I go to ADC and if I type reg svr 32 schema mgmt.dll registry succeeded MMC, and then if I click on file, and then if I click on add remove snap in, and then if I say active directory schema, and if I say add, and if I say okay, so, and if I expand this, okay, I have to expand this, but DC name is there. Okay, and if I click here, and if I click on here classes, so more action and create class. Okay, you are the schema master. So change active directory domain controller and then ADC. So it is quite strange. Why from the DC, if I open, remember the schema, when you open from DC and ADC, it will point you to schema master. Okay, it will point you to the schema master only. So from ADC also, if I open up the schema, it will point me to the schema master. That's the default behavior. So if I go here and if I come here and change, in your case, something has happened here. As of now, your job is done. Okay. Okay, something has happened. Click cancel here. Okay, something was open up. Oh, perfect. That's what I was thinking. So my dear friend, you have opened up a window. That's why. Okay. You might have opened up something, and that's why it was not allowing you to go there. So my dear friends, right click and say change active directory domain controller. Have you done this? Have you pointed to ADC? Even if you go to ADC and open up the same thing, it points to DC. You have to point to ADC. So why to go to ADC? Come do it from DC only. Have you pointed to ADC? No, my dear friend. Can ADC make changes in the schema? Is ADC the schema master? No, the create attribute is grayed out. The classes is grayed out. Create class, create user type is grayed out. Getting the point? It is grayed out. Correct? So you cannot create object type, meaning classes. You cannot create attributes because this is read only. This is, sorry, this is not the schema master. ADC is not the schema master. Now let's transfer the role to ADC. Are you ready? Now my dear friends, right click on ADC and do you see operation master? Do you see the word operation master? Do you see this? Click on that, and are you on this page? Are you on this page? The schema master manages modification to the schema. Only one domain controller in the entire enterprise. Enterprise meaning forest. Perform this role. The current role holder is DC. Do you want to give the role to ADC? This is what you must see. Say change. Say yes. Have you transferred the role, my dear friends, to ADC? That's great. Now, once you have transferred the role, type the command netdom query FSMO. Please type the command netdom query FSMO and you will see that the role has been transferred. Now who is the schema master? If you type the same command from ADC and ask who is the schema master, you will get the same result, my dear friends. The result is same. Who is the schema master? ADC is not the schema master. Getting the point? This is done, right? Now the next role which we are going to see is domain naming master. The next role is domain naming master. The name is domain naming. See carefully, domain naming master. So your DC is right now a domain naming master. Now what is the job of domain naming master? Very simple job. Listen carefully, my dear friend. This is the forest. This is the domain. This is the domain controller. This is the ADC. It is the schema master, domain naming master, read PDC, and infrastructure master. Now, when you create, as of now, the focus is on domain naming master. So this is the domain naming master. So when you create a new domain in your forest, like japan.attari.com, when you create a new domain like japan.attari.com in your forest, then the request goes to the domain naming master. The request goes to the domain controller, which is the domain naming master. The request goes to the domain controller, which is having the role of domain naming master. And the request goes and says, okay, we are creating a new domain with the name japan.attari.com has been created in the forest of attari.com. So the domain naming master will check in its data. If the name is already there, if there is one more domain with the name of japan.attari.com, it will not allow you to create. It will give you an error. And if there is no domain with that name, it will allow you to create. So that means the domain name should be unique. In your forest, if a new domain is there, it is created, duplicate name should not be there, it should be unique. That responsibility is of domain naming master. So domain naming master takes the responsibility that the domain name should be unique. So whenever a new domain is created in your forest, the request goes to, when you put the name Japan. You have to put the name, and a pop-up comes, give the name. There you have to put japan.attari.com. When you say next quickly, the request will go to the domain naming master. It will check if there is no domain with the name of japan.attari.com, it will allow you to create, otherwise it will give you an error. Getting the point? That is the simple job of domain naming master. Simple. Okay, that is the only job of domain naming master. Now who is the domain naming master right now? DC. Let's transfer the domain naming master role to ADC, my dear friends. Let's see where can we go and transfer the domain naming master role. Are you on DC? Are you on DC, my dear friends? Are you on DC? You have to type the command domain.msc. There are two ways. One is you can type domain.msc, or you can open up the server manager page and you can click on tools and you can click on Active Directory Domains and Trust. Tools and Active Directory Domains and Trust, or type the command domain.msc, and my dear friends, you will come on this page. Are you on this page? Do you see domain.msc? Do you see Active Directory Domains and Trust? Are you on this page? In your company, if you want to find how many domains we have in our forest, whether we have a child domain, whether we have a tree domain, what domain we have to come on this page and see how many domains we have in the forest. Getting the point? At this point we have only one domain, that is the root domain, and this architecture is known as single domain forest. So are you on this page, my dear friends? Do you see this? Okay, now once you come on this page, you have to right click here and you have to right click on the top and say change active directory. You have to change. If someone tries to go here, and DC is right now the domain naming master, see the issue. If you click on operation master, and it will say the current role master is DC, do you want to transfer to DC? Do you want to transfer to yourself and change? And it will say no. How you are transferring to yourself? Only you already have the role. I said I do not want to transfer to myself, I want to transfer to ADC. Then simple is, you have to point to ADC. What do you have to do? ADC name should be there here. You have to connect to ADC. Right click and say change active directory domain controller. Are you on this page? Have you right click? Now my dear friends, click on change active directory domain controller, click on ADC, 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 and say okay. Now if you right click and say operation master, do you see that the domain naming operation master ensure the responsibility of domain naming master is domain name should be unique in the forest. Only one domain controller in the forest has this responsibility, perform this rule. So who is that? It is DC. Do you want to transfer this responsibility to ADC? I will say yes. Change and say yes. Have you done this? The operation master was successfully transferred, my dear friend. Have you done this? Now click on close. Now let's go here and type netdom query FSMO, and you will see the schema master and the domain naming master roles have been transferred. Go ahead and type this command at both, because these are forest wide roles, meaning only one domain controller will have schema master, only one domain controller will be the domain naming master. Right now it is with the ADC. ADC is having the role of schema master and ADC is having the role of domain naming master. So my dear friends, I will repeat this. You have to go to Active Directory Domains and Trust. You have to first right click. Okay, you have to first right click and say change Active Directory domain controller, click on ADC, say OK, and then right click and say Operation Master and say change. Okay. If I want to transfer this role back to a DC, then I have to do the same thing. Point to DC. Concept is same. Reverse gear. Point to DC, and then right click and say Operation Master. The current role holder is ADC. Do you want to transfer to DC? Click on change. If you have understood the concept, you know how to give the role back also. It is very simple. Now, my dear friend, now as per our analogy, what the ADC has become, can anyone tell me? What the ADC has become, my dear friends? As per the analogy, the ADC is now the principal of the school. ADC has not become DC. We have not transferred all the 5 roles. We have just transferred 2 roles now. So now it is principal plus maths teacher. Getting the point? Because it is having the principal role, that is the schema master and the domain naming master. Is it clear? So it is now the principal and the maths teacher. Are you understanding, my dear friend? It is principal plus maths teacher right now. And now this is the class teacher. In the next session, we will transfer the class teacher responsibility, and then it will become completely DC. But now a last small theory, and then we will wind up the session. My dear friends, whenever what I have told you, that when you install the Active Directory service, you get a centralized database. By default, the database is stored in where C Windows NTDS folder, and the name of the database is ntds.dit, correct? And all the users like Zamir, Irfan, Nazim are created here. User OU, whatever you see in dsa.msc is been stored here. Correct, my dear friends? This is what I have told you till now, right? About ntds.dit. This is half correct. Today we will get full correct. Full correct meaning, my dear friends, in case of Active Directory database, there are 4 partitions. There are 5 partitions. That are, fifth partition is of global catalog, which I will explain you at the right time. As of now, there are 4 partitions. So if the DC is global catalog also, then the 5th partition is there, which I will explain you in the global catalog topic. So as of now, there are 4 partition. Your ntds.dit has 4 partition. One is the schema partition. Other is the configuration partition. The third is the domain partition. Which partition? Domain partition. And the fourth is the application partition. Which partition? You will be asked in interviews, my dear friend. Remember, when you are joining a class, you are getting things on a plate. If you see at my level, I have taken a lot of efforts, lot of pain. I have failed multiple times to get this knowledge. No one has spoon-fed me. If you are even not ready to take from the plate and eat, then it's a problem. Getting the point, my dear friends? So when you are getting things on a plate, at least take it and eat it. Okay, that means at least try to understand the concept and try to take the concept in your mind, in your heart. Because whatever we are learning in this entire course, at least that knowledge you should have. I don't know, I don't say that we have taken you to 100%. That is not possible. But we will take you to a level that at least when you talk with someone, they will feel that they are talking with a knowledgeable system admin. Yes, base is clear, concept is clear. We can take him, guide him, teach him, further he will do on his own. So my dear friends, coming here, so this ntds.dit has how many partitions? You have to try to memorize it right away, because these are favorite interview questions. 4 partitions: schema partition, configuration partition, domain partition, application partition. And if you felt my word as bad, do not worry, take one more plate and have good breakfast. That's what I can say. So my dear friends, schema, configuration, domain, and application. There are total 4 partitions. Schema, what you have done? You have done reg svr 32. What you have done? Reg svr 32 schema management.dll, right? And you have seen the schema. The schema that you have seen by doing reg svr 32 schema management.dll. This is the schema by opening mmc. This is the schema. The schema is stored here. The object types and its attributes are stored in the schema partition. To see the schema, you have to do reg svr 32 schema management.dll, run this registry, and then open up mmc and then see the schema. Configuration. So what is there in the schema? You will tell that in the schema object types and its attributes are there in schema, and that is stored here. Because whatever you see here, my dear friend, there is a place to store na. It is not like that. It is it is stored somewhere physically, and that it is stored in ntds.dit only, but in the schema partition. Okay, now what is there in the configuration partition? How many domains we have? This information we have in the configuration partition. How many domains we have, how many sites we have. Okay, site and subnet information is also there in the configuration partition. So that means, my dear friend, the domain.msc information and the ds-site.msc information is stored in the configuration partition. So in the configuration partitions, information is stored like how many domains we have in the forest and how many site and subnets we have. That all information is stored in the configuration partition. To see that, you have to see the configuration partition content, you have to open up domain.msc and ds-site.msc. But the domain naming master works on the domain part. It does not work on the site part. Okay, there is no relation of site, but the site information is also stored here. Now, my dear friends, what I told you that in the domain partition, what is there in the domain partition? Domain partition, this all users. So this, when I used to tell you that, okay, the Zamir, Irfan, Nazim, they are here, meaning I used to just create this like this. Getting the point? I used to show you domain partition only at that time. Are you understanding, my dear friend? I used to show you domain partition only like this. But now I am giving you a better picture. That is, it's in short, it is having multiple partition, and this is one partition. The domain partition consists of the actual users. Whatever you see in dsa.msc is there in the domain partition. And my dear friends, what is there in the application partition? Whatever application partition is, whatever you see by dns mgmt.msc. If you type dns mgmt.msc, whatever DNS records you see, DNS information you see, that DNS information is stored here. DNS mgmt.msc, that DNS information is stored here. So DNS information, this DNS data is stored in the application partition. The application partition is meant for applications like DNS. Okay, so I will repeat this, my dear friend. It is important for you to understand. Do not worry, we are at the ending of this session, but this is important. This is the schema partition, the schema partition, the configuration partition, the domain partition, and the application partition. The schema partition consists of object type and its attributes. To see the schema, you have to run the command reg svr32 schema management.dll mmc and then see the schema. To see the configuration, how many domains we have, how many site and subnets we have, that's all thing we have. And you, if you want to see domain.msc and ds-site.msc is the command. Okay, now the domain users Zamir, Irfan, Nazim, OU, IT, OU, whatever it is, if you want to see the domain partition, the command is dsa.msc. Then all the a records, whatever DNS information is there, it is stored in the application partition. If you want to see DNS mgt.msc is the command to see that. Getting the point? Have you understood, my dear friends? Have you understood this? Are you getting, my dear friends? Obviously you have to revise. Okay, now the last point is, The last point is, this is the last point, because all these questions are asked in the interviews. Okay, when you are taking at least a level 2 interviews, you will be asked all these questions. So the next thing is, this is the domain attari.com, and imagine, take it at my level also. No, I have to draw multiple diagrams, right? You have to just listen. I have to draw. I am taking the pain of speaking also and drawing also. Are you understanding, my dear friend? So you have to just listen and absorb. Okay, I can stop doing the diagram. Who's going to, like, it is like in my, we can see that. Okay, I can also take the, I can also skip this. Okay, why to draw so many diagrams? Just take some ready-made diagram and ready-made custom fancy ppts and just open up and show. But that's what I don't like. I want to put in effort, and I want to like start from the scratch, because that's all why I like it to do it like this way. Now the next thing is, my dear friends, so this is DC and this is ADC, and this is Japan DC. Now the next thing is, these are every domain controller. Remember, it is important to understand here, every domain controller has the ntds.date database, and you will see, yes, we have seen that every domain controller. I've shown you also in the ADC topic that every domain controller has the ntds.date database. Now they have the 4 partitions: schema, configuration, domain and application, schema, configuration, domain and application, schema, configuration, domain and application. My dear friends, see here very carefully, this is very important. The schema of all the ADCs, all the domain controller will be same, and the configuration content will be same. That means if you open up reg SVR32 schema management .dll from here, you will see the same content. You open up domain.msc from here, from even from child domain, you will see the same. You open up site.msc, you will see the same content. So that information is same everywhere. So my dear friends, who can make changes in the schema? Schema master can make changes in the schema. Who can make changes in the configuration, in the configuration partition? So in the, actually in the configuration partition, there is no concept of changes, but the domain naming master, we have seen that it checks the configuration partition, how many domains are there in the forest, and the job is to make the domain name unique. So in short, my dear friends, what we say is, the schema master, if the schema master make changes in the schema, that will be reflected to everyone. Getting the point? That will be reflected to everyone if the schema master makes changes in the schema. For example, if you add a new attribute like PAN number here, that will get reflected to everyone. Are you understanding, my dear friends? So that will get reflected to everyone, though other people will not have power to make changes in the schema. Only schema master will have the power. The same way, in case of domain naming master, if whenever new domains are created like japan.attari.com, this is japan.attari.com, the request will go to the domain naming master. This is schema and domain naming master we are focusing on. So it will check the configuration partition. Okay, how many domains we have? Okay, we do not have japan.attari.com in our forest. Okay, we will allow you to create. So my dear friends, in short, what we say is, the schema and the domain naming partition, sorry, the schema and the configuration partition is same in the entire forest. This is what you have to just remember. The schema and configuration partition is same in entire forest. This line you have to remember, meaning all domain controllers will have same content. Getting the point? So if you open up reg SVR32 from here, you will see the same thing. If you open up domain.msc from here, you will see the same thing. Getting the point, my dear friends? Schema and configuration partition is same in the entire forest. All domain controllers will have the same content, meaning all domain controllers will have the same schema and same configuration partition. Is this clear? And we say that the schema master works on schema partition and the domain naming master works on configuration partition. We say that the schema master works on schema partition and the domain naming master works on the configuration partition. Working meaning it has to check whenever new domains are added, it has to check in that configuration partition. That is mean the job of working. Okay, so that's it for this session. Let's meet in the next.